Kia ora, my name is Louisa Jones and I'm an industrial advisor with NZNO. And this year I've had the pleasure of being the advocate for the Evolution Collective Agreement covering Wakefield, Bowen, and Royston. And that negotiation took 5 days to come to this settlement, which has been presented to you today for voting. So together with me at the negotiations were your delegate representatives, and I'd like to take a moment to thank them. So we had Lisa Blackmore, Melanie McLean, we had Simon Outie, and also Steph Meek. And thank you to our delegates for representing members so well in the negotiations. The tone of the negotiations was positive. We had two new people on the employer's side of the table, one being the new group CEO, Simon, and the other being the hospital CEO, Michael. And both had the intention of coming to the negotiations, not to sort of play games or make it take any longer than it was otherwise necessary, but listened to concerns well and took our issue seriously. So that was really positive. And we managed to, after that 5 days, come to a terms of settlement, which is being put to you today. And throughout the course of this week, at the various hospitals at different times, there will be ratification meetings where you can come and ask questions about the settlement and how the settlement might impact you or your colleagues. And we will try and answer those questions. Then voting will open on Friday, the 13th of September, in an online ballot. And it will continue on until the 19th of September so that people have plenty of time to vote. One member, one vote, and across all three hospitals, 50% plus one to carry. So if the majority of people vote yes on the deal, then we'll renew the collective agreement on the basis. And if not, then we would need to find out why and go back to negotiations to represent that issue. So I'm going to talk really briefly about the settlement itself and have that discussion, but you'll have a copy of the terms of settlement with you, which will have more detail, and indeed it'll have the schedules laid out for you to look at, and the updated draft collective agreement so that you can look at the detail of it. But just to kind of give you a bit of a flavour of what the deal is, the deal starts from the expiry of your previous agreement. So this begins on 1 July 2024 and will expire on 31 October 2026. So 28 months in total. During the term of this agreement, initially, all members will be paid at least 2%, which will be backdated to the 1 July date. Then there'll be a further uplift, and that uplift would happen when Te Whatu Ora or HNZ concludes their collective agreement negotiations with NZNO, and those negotiations are currently underway. We know that the HNZ agreement does set sort of the standard for the sector, and we know we want to be above the standard at Evolution. And so the way that this settlement works is that everybody would get their backdated 2% now, and then when Health NZ does settle, then members will get another uplift that would bring them up to the Health NZ rate plus 2%. Now, there's a couple of roles which are already the Health NZ rate plus 1%. So what would happen is you would, once that settlement happens in Health NZ, you would calculate up to now 2% for those roles. So all members at Evolution would end up being the Health NZ rate plus 2%. And that is the way that the agreement will continue to roll out. And it will also include any one-off payments that are paid to Health NZ employees. So if they get a lump sum, for example, in lieu of back pay, then that would also, that lump sum plus 2% would go to our members at Evolution. So another aspect of this is a prorated payment, which is the company is considering an incentive payment for people to vote yes on this deal. And so this is a payment of $1,500 gross to all employees, prorated for part-time and casual employees. And the basis of that was that we can managed to negotiate a settled collective agreement within 5 days. And we've taken that full 5 days so far with the negotiations. And so that is the incentive payment. There are some new roles within the coverage of this collective agreement, which we're really pleased to report. So the first one is the SSD team leaders will now be covered by the collective agreement at the rate of $90,981. Nurse educators will also be included in the collective agreement, and the rate for nurse educator and anyone that's employed to be a nurse educator, which is currently 3 people, 1 at each hospital, although there is a vacancy of one of those roles at the moment, will be at the rate of $122,473. And that, on top of that, if people are doing education coordination as a part of their role, so they're doing education within part of the hospital that they work at and coordinating that under the nurse educator for their hospital, they'll be paid an education coordinator allowance during the time that they're doing that work of $2 an hour. The rate for a nurse educator will be the anchor point for that. For further increases will be the grade 2, step 2 of the Health NZ, NZNO senior nurse schedule of the collective agreement for Health NZ. And then there's 2 new working parties. One is around the coverage of the collective agreement. And that's because at each of the different hospitals, there are people doing the same or very similar roles with slightly different titles and slightly different job descriptions. So the idea of the coverage working party would be to have a group of delegates and a group of managers that would work together throughout the term of the document to work through all of that and make recommendations to the next bargaining team as to what those roles should be in the agreement and what the scale of that agreement should be. And that's all going to be worked throughout the term of the collective agreement. Similarly, there's a working party for staff to patient ratios to ensure safe staffing within each of the hospitals, and that's culturally appropriate. And so there's a separate working party for that. Now, the terms of reference for each of those working parties is in the terms of settlement document as a schedule. For jury service, the top-up has gone from being a maximum of 5 days to being an ongoing top-up for the length of the case that the person is being juried for. And for public holidays, payment on a public holiday will be paid at double time instead of time and a half. The Christmas shutdown period is capped at 12 days annual leave over the Christmas New Year period, so it can't be extended out any longer than that, which it actually can be under the legislation. Now, the delegates will be with you at the meetings that can answer any questions, but I'll also be available if there are questions that they can't answer. And there's also the terms of settlement to reference and the updated draft collective agreement. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see how the vote goes. Thanks. Ka kite.